think we're being terrible PR people because we're flu ambassadors and we're saying flu is not sexy. It's very sexy.
Don't tell me it isn't boring. Don't you dare.
We got to get you trained first.
There isn't anybody that's afraid of influenza. You go in a focus group and you say, are you afraid of getting HIV if you're at risk? Oh, absolutely. Are you afraid of getting cancer? Absolutely. Are you afraid of the flu? Don't bother me.
PR issue in some ways.
I wish the narrative would have come up on the video coming through, because what's called out in that narrative is a sense of urgency.
Disruption. Why don't we blow the system up? I mean, obviously we can't just turn off the spigot on the system we have and then say, hey, everyone in the world should get this new vaccine we haven't given to anyone yet. But there must be some...
The sense of urgency.
Sense of urgency.
Do we need to have lots of people die for that sense of urgency to occur?
Well, the incredible thing is that lots of people do die every year, and yet we aren't mobilizing.
You know, we have to take that sense of urgency, that economic cost, that societal disruption, and the lives lost into perspective.
Would undermine all of the essentials of civic life, how it would undermine their own ability to mobilize and respond to needs, and also the recognition of the economic costs and productivity costs, in addition to the medical concerns, and ultimately the loss of faith of people in government and leadership.
Envision what that universal flu vaccine is in a very rapid, urgent pace to get there.
Flu pandemic-like scenario, and they said...
But it is not too crazy to think that an outbreak of a novel avian virus could occur in China somewhere. We could get the RNA sequence from that.
A diverse group of big thinkers, people from science, people from philanthropy, from industry, from journalism, to take on issues in vaccine and vaccination. And not surprisingly, given that it was the 100th anniversary of the 1918 pandemic, that was the issue. And that's where the that's where that speechless video came from. But that's
silent movie.
But that's where the urgency came from.
There might be a need or even an urgent call for an entity of excitement out there that's completely disruptive, that's not beholden to bureaucratic strings and processes.
So we're dealing with a continual moving target from season to season and the threat of a pandemic.
It's time to stop talking. It's time to act.
Ultimate aspirational goal of having a vaccine that you could give relatively infrequently compared.
Clearly, disruption comes with uncertainty, and it comes with uncertainty on many levels. Uncertainty within the scientific community and how we do science, regulatory uncertainty.
I don't care what your perception is, we're going to address the problem in a disruptive way and in an iterative way. Because
if the 2009 pandemic had been much more deadly, would that have ended up being a better thing for humanity? Come on, be honest.
Hundreds of thousands of people die of it each year, and when you get a pandemic, millions and millions.
50,000 people around the world dying every single year. We would have 33 million people dead.
650,000 people died last year, and they will die this year, and they will die next year.
The Gates Foundation has mathematical modelers who are pretty good, and they have estimated that it had been anything like the 1918 flu, 37 million people would have died. And then we wouldn't be having this conversation, or at least some of us wouldn't, because we'd be dead. Well, that's why I asked the dark and unpleasant question, does something really bad have to happen? I mean, it seems to me one of the curses of the public health world is, if you guys do your job well, everyone goes along and they're healthy.
And they cut your funding.
Right, but if
fires would have been seeded all around the globe.
The most devastating epidemics in the history of humanity, most likely virus to cause the most damage to humanity. If they don't kill a lot of people, we just move on. How is a pandemic different than what we get every year? We need a new entity. We need something special to do this, because I won't say we're spinning our wheels, we're not, but we're definitely not accomplishing what we could accomplish. And that requires a different kind of entity. And I'm wondering who is going to run that entity, because I don't really think the government is probably the answer. And postdocs go where there is funding. And The funding exists, but there's greater funding in other areas. I don't run into...
This way to get a grad student really excited about something that isn't sexy is to, put a gown on it by having a lot of money. There has been movements among certain members of Congress. Ed Markey put a bill in for increasing the influenza for universal flu vaccine by $1 billion over 5 years, which is $200 million over each year for 5 years. When you put that kind of investment, you will get people excited not to do the same thing they're only doing. You'll get new people to come in with new ideas that are disruptive.